Erik Horne here at the Target Center in Minneapolis. Final score tonight, Thunder loses 131 to 120. This is the fifth loss for the Thunder in 6 games. The Thunder's defense continues to play, up and down inconsistently, cannot get consistent stops. And, Paul George comes back tonight, and he comes back from the 3-game absence he had from the sore right shoulder. And while his offense was a struggle, 25 points on 25 shots, you knew his offense would be a little bit rusty coming back and not having any game action. The defense is where the Thunder missed him most of all. The Thunder actually held up pretty well over the past 3 games defensively. The Memphis game kind of skewered their defensive numbers because Memphis is not very good, and the Thunder was able to hold them to 95 points. But against San Antonio, the Thunder makes them take tough shots. San Antonio makes a bunch of mid-range shots. Against Philadelphia, Thunder has some mental breakdowns that really were the cause of them losing that game late. Tonight, it was really just a combination of a lot of things. They didn't rebound very well. They lost the rebound battle 52 to 45. They didn't hit free throws. They shot 18 to 31 from the free throw line. You cannot miss 13 free throws on the road. That's a recurring theme for the Thunder. They're not a good shooting team. They're not a good free throw shooting team. Despite the hot shooting that they had for a 2-month stretch, the Thunder's not going to be able to rely on their three-point shooting or their shooting overall when the playoffs come. There got to be a team that relies on their defense, and the Thunder's defense has not been consistent since the start of the year. Teams are picking on them in pick and roll. Steven Adams playing high in the pick and roll, having to account for the Thunder's guards not being able to stay in front of guys. Russell Westbrook and Dennis Schroeder continue to get exploited in pick and roll coverage. Teams have got the film on these guys now. Dennis Schroeder's a small guy who gets easily screened. Russell Westbrook's a guy who's not going to fight to get small and get between the screener and the ball handler so Steven Adams can drop off and cover the big man or pop out to the big man. So that's really an issue that the Thunder needs to figure out with their guards. And frankly, I don't know if there's any personnel that the Thunder can get to replace those guys because Russell Westbrook and Dennis Schroeder are just going to have to play minutes. They're making the money. They're the guys that the Thunder are counting on to set them up, to set up Paul George, to set up other guys for 3-point shots. And those guys are going to have to play better defense in order for the Thunder to be better. It really puts Steven Adams in a difficult position because he's a guy who, not only has to drop off a little bit, to guard for any penetration, but he also has to play up on bigs. And when he's in that no man's land, it allows for guys to go off from mid-range, particularly when the Thunder are switching, particularly when he's playing against a big man like Karl-Anthony Towns who can hit set shots from 23 feet, which is what he was doing tonight against the Thunder. The Thunder gives up 71 points in the first half. They end up shooting pretty well overall for the game, but the Minnesota really just didn't have any resistance from the Thunder's defense. Derrick Rose comes in and he lights up Dennis Schroeder. There are miscommunications with Paul George being back on the floor, and even he wasn't his physical self he usually is defensively or offensively. Now, the Thunder's got a really tough road trip coming up. They're going to Portland Thursday for the first night of a back-to-back. Then they play the LA Clippers on Friday, and then they get a couple of days off before they have to go and play Utah in Utah on Monday. So this is a tough stretch for the Thunder. It's going to be difficult for them to win any of those games because those are really good teams, and they're fortunate that they've built up enough equity in the beginning of the season, beating Portland 3 times, beating Utah already 3 times, that they can go into these series and while they're critical for the standings in terms of teams jumping them, they still have tiebreakers over those 2 teams. It'll be big for them to get at least 1 win, and if they come out with 2 out of 3 out of this road trip, that'll be a big time swing for the Thunder in terms of the standings. Here's some post-game video from Billy Donovan, Steven Adams, Russell Westbrook, and Paul George.